Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we're joined with a very special guest, Brother Tyrone. How are you doing today?
Well, salam. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank you actually for inviting me, and
It's my pleasure.
so I'm thankful. Thank you.
Oh, no.
Yes.
So how's your fast going? How's Ramadan this year? It's a bit better, I think, than last year. It's time's going back slowly.
Yes.
So
yes.
we're getting to a better time of the year, shorter days.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Not only based on the time zone, but also last Ramadan I had to break Ramadan, unfortunately, because I got ill. So it's even better in that sense that this year I'm much healthier,
Alhamdulillah.
and because of the time zone, as you mentioned, Allah is making it easy for me. So
Alhamdulillah.
it's going well.
How are you feeling the fast? Going good?
Yes. So it's interesting though, because I'm doing, of course, we're fasting most of the day, but it's a lot of meal prep, so that we break the fast.
Yes.
You're one is prepared, so that's balancing both.
Definitely, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess many times people say that you end up gaining more weight in Ramadan because all the food you eat.
This is true.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
So today's interview, we're just going to talk about your journey to Islam and it's just some thoughts on that, inshallah. So, question number one: who is Brother Tyrone? If you don't mind asking.
Who is Brother Tyrone? You know what? I came across a quote not that long ago that hopefully I don't butcher it up, but it has to do like he who defines himself can't really know who he is.
Right. Okay.
And so I guess I am someone who is a seeker of knowledge and doesn't try to define myself because I'm always learning, always growing.
Definitely, yeah.
I can talk about, of course, my background and how it shaped me in terms of who I am. And I can say that I was raised in a two-parent home along with my sister, who is 7 years older than me.
Okay.
And it was a traditional, I guess, family unit in comparison to other families that we knew.
Yeah.
And, of course, children coming up in any family, they're always largely influenced by the parents and the parents' ideals and beliefs. And so that was no different than my experience.
Right.
Yeah. I could also say that not only were parents an influence, but of course the environment was an influence. So I can recall, and this might be surprising to a lot of viewers, but for like the first, I guess, 7 years of my life, I was really like an extrovert.
Really?
Yes, and that was largely based on the environment I was in.
Yeah.
Then in terms of where I lived, and then I moved to another parish where it was less children, less activity, and I almost became like an only child. And so I know you're not an only child, but I have one child, and he probably could attest to how only children tend to isolate or create their own world.
Yeah, find their own ways of
Find their own
enjoying
way.
it.
So that was my experience as
Okay.
well. So I moved from being an extrovert to introvert, I guess.
It's a good experience. You get a taste of both worlds,
I agree.
Experience. So,
Yes,
how you've answered the question like how you were brought up. You said you went through different phases where you were extroverted and introverted,
Right.
and many people only get one taste of that.
Yes.
So like, how did that lead up into your like education and work life? Like, did that influence what you studied and where you eventually started to work?
Absolutely, that's a very good question. It did influence what I chose. I didn't realize it consciously, but subconsciously, it definitely impacted what I did in terms of education and work. So when I became more introverted, I would, of course, observe a lot of human behavior and contemplate on it and reflect a lot. And so in terms of my educational route, I wound up studying early childhood education, and then later clinical criminology. So in terms of the fields, it's about studying human behaviors, studying human psychology. And I think that was largely due to, like I said, me being an observer during the phase, And so I chose careers such as school teacher, probation officer, counselor, which is now what I'm doing. And I used to think that I fell into those careers, that I fell into that educational pathway, but it was definitely the impact from my early childhood. So I can see it clearly now in hindsight.
Right. So now where do you work? Like, what's your primary occupation now?
Right. So primarily I work for the Department of Education as the dual enrollment officer.
Okay.
But prior to that, I spent 15 years at the Berkeley Institute as a senior school counselor, and later head of student services. But right now, I'm again Department of Education, and then in the evening, I have one of three therapists from a business called Mask, and so we provide counseling for males, age 13 all the way to late adulthood.
So you've got a good feel for like the problems people are facing now, I guess.
Absolutely.
You know, in terms of like how they're thinking and you know the rise of mental illnesses and all these things, I guess. So that's a good insight then, inshallah.
Yes.
So now taking a more sort of spiritual trajectory, like what was were you a spiritual person before you accepted Islam, and like did you have a religion you followed or worldview? How was your spiritual growth now?
Yes. I think I was actually always spiritual before I even knew it.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to that period of my childhood where I told you I became very contemplative, reflective. I thought about life even as a young age and the meaning of it, and it was shaped by Christianity. So I grew up in I guess I could phrase it as a Christian home, but I know for the first 10 years, I guess, of my childhood, it was not the conventional Christian home, but because my mother was raised in a Christian home, she imparted those values on myself and my sister. So we attended Sunday school at a young age, and later then when we grew up, and I should speak about myself, when I grew up, particularly in my late teens is when I made the choice to practice Christianity. And that was precipitated by my father dying when I was 17. And that had a profound effect on me. And so it again threw me into that contemplative state of like, what is this meaning of life and death, and how is it that we're here one day and the next we're not? And so of course I started to think about God, and like I said, I practiced Christianity from that time. Moving forward, of course, I would later discover Islam through my journey, which I'm sure you asked me about.
So how did that tie into that? What point did you start feeling that there was something different, or what was actually even before that? Did you have any knowledge of Islam like up till that point? Like, did you have any presumptions? What did you see about it in like the media, or whatever? Like, did you have any?
The only prior knowledge I would have had about Islam was when I was in high school. So not only did I work at the Berkeley Institute, I actually attended the Berkeley Institute as a student. And we had to take a lot of subjects. One of the subjects that was a mandatory subject was religious knowledge. And that was the first time I heard about Islam. So in religious knowledge, they taught not only about Christianity, but it was also about Islam and Judaism, the major world religions. And what I can recall from that class was just maybe two things that I can recall, because it's such a long time ago. But that was that Islam meant peace, and that it had 5 pillars. So that stands out in my mind, but that was the only prior knowledge I had. Nothing further.
So nothing, no anti-Islamic rhetoric, you'd say?
No, not at all.
That's good then. I mean, I feel, even in my experience in Bermuda is one of the best places, in terms of there's so less prejudice and, that sort of discrimination that happens here. And I guess we should be grateful for that.
Yes. Alhamdulillah. But I will say, man, I studied abroad in England. I did my master's degree. That would be the next real occasion when I was exposed to Islam. Because in England, as you may know, it's a real international country. And particularly when you're in a university environment, it's far more international because you have students all over the world. And one of my best mates at the time, who's actually still a best mate, but we communicate through social media and whatnot. But he was Muslim, or is Muslim. And I would say that he presented Dawah in the conventional sense,
Yeah.
in terms of literature or perhaps even a deep conversation, but definitely it was in his actions or behavior. And then I saw other Muslims that, so for example, I stayed in a dorm, and outside of the dorm there was a lunch wagon, and the operators of the lunch wagon were Muslim, and so I came in contact with them that way. And I experienced Islam through their behavior, through their actions, rather than traditional dawah in terms of passing out literature or going to a masjid or mosque.
I guess that shows that actions speak a lot louder than words for majority of your interactions with people.
This is it. I mean, once again, to go back to my study of psychology, it's all about human behavior and action, and so you can learn a lot through that as opposed to this is someone
logical arguments. It's not always confrontational. Maybe that's the minority of the times, actually, right?
Yes.
So a lot of times they see a Muslim how they act, or it could be the opposite, right? They can have someone who's really bad to them that always just turns them away from the message. And like the same when you look at the Prophet Muhammad's life, you see that the first thing before he even gave a message to his people, the people knew that he was honest and trustworthy, right? Like when he went up on the mountain the first time when he was about to give the message, he said, if I told you there is an army coming to you from behind this mountain, would you believe me? They said yes. And then he said, so what about if I tell you that there's going to be a day of judgment and there's going to be paradise and hell? Then they obviously turned away and whatnot. But I guess that initial, your people should know you as someone who's honest, trustworthy, and a kind person. Well, that's important, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about your characteristics, your traits, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So now moving on. So what made you take the decision to convert to Islam? What was it?
Yeah, it was a journey.
Okay.
So like I mentioned previously, I was practicing Christianity, and that did fade over time.
Okay.
And when I fell away from Christianity, I did go on a years-long journey of trying to discover what it is, what pathway I would take in terms of spiritual practice.
Right.
And so I looked into things such as Rastafari.
Okay.
I looked into Buddhism to a small degree.
Yeah.
I even looked into Nation Islam. I think that was the last kind of trajectory.
Yeah.
But like a lot of instances in life, there are moments that wake one up, and at least that was in my experience. And so, similar to what woke me up to practice Christianity, there was another seminal period in my life, and it occurred during the pandemic.
Okay.
And if you recall, we were in lockdown, and a lot of people began to reflect and think about their purpose.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden you're alone, right?
Correct. And so I think it was through life experiences, through that time, solitude, and being locked down.
It's 6:22 p.m.
Excuse me.
She wants your part of it.
This is it. Yeah. We'll take this off and put it over there. Yeah. It's always listening, huh?
Of course.
So it was during that period of just life happening and being in the lockdown.
Yeah.
And like I said, looking at Nation of Islam on YouTube, and then also being invited by one of the Muslim sisters I used to work with at the Bark Institute, Sister Amina Steed.
Yes.
She invited me to hear the Muslim scholar Sheikh Quick.
Yes, I'd love you quick.
Yes, and from there I became even more interested and became more drawn to Islam and what Islam meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like even one step, I think like an anecdote I'd like to see if what your perspective is. At what point you said like at first you're practicing Christianity and that started to fade away? Like was that because of intellectual reasons you'd say, or was that more of it just didn't feel right,
Yes, I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
So So actually, from the academic sense, I guess, or intellectual sense, the story of Jesus didn't after a certain while didn't resonate with me in the sense that I could not understand the Trinity, the idea of the Trinity, and as you know, Jesus makes up 1/3 of the Trinity. That part started to confuse me. Also, the part of how Jesus is typically presented in terms visually. Bothered me. So when I did my undergraduate degree, I attended a HBCU, so historically black college university. And so my eyes were opened, I think, from that experience. And moving forward, but it didn't mean that I abandoned it at the time. It was I was just keeping mental track of different things along the way, and so I think it becomes a cumulative effect. And when you receive,
that slowly starts adding on top of each other and compounding.
Exactly. And so gaining different exposure, having different experiences. So like I said, even being in Leicester and understanding that not everyone shares the same worldview or even religious background or worldview as I once thought it. Everyone did, because as you know, sometimes you could be in your own bubble.
And I think Bermuda compounds to that, right? You're really in, like, it's so isolated that it becomes very, you may see the world like this is what the world is. When you go away, you're like, wow, this is so much more.
Absolutely. And then even beyond that, from a spiritual sense, I've always felt God's awareness, His presence, even from like being young. As I mentioned, when we have time to contemplate, when one is isolated or has a lot of quiet time, I think it's a natural progression to contemplate things that are spiritual.
Definitely.
And then besides, we know that Allah has placed within all of us the knowingness of Him.
And so, innate disposition.
The innate disposition, absolutely. And so, to make a long story short, Islam began to make more sense to me. One thing that really stood out to me was when I learned that we as humans were not born into sin. I thought that was something very profound. It was like
a light bulb moment.
That we're not born into sin, that we're born good, we're born Muslim, and that is the world that shapes us. Eventually, and makes us sinful. And so that was actually, for whatever reason, that was a profound effect.
It can, like, that's
psyche.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of people I talk to have sort of that same idea. Like, they take those things for granted because, as you said, when that's all you see, then you just think that's the norm. But, like, for example, original sin, we as Muslims deny, because what sense would it make for you to take on the sin of another which you didn't commit anything, right? We didn't eat from any tree.
Correct.
And then further on top of that, if someone took our sins and died for it, then we're kind of a redundant variable in the equation, because we had the sin, we got the sin from something we never committed. And our forgiveness, which for their ideology is that it has already been done and it has been dealt with. It's by something you never did. So really, you're just there. All you have to do is believe in a certain statement that someone died for your sins. So it doesn't work with the logic and the Trinity as well, right?
Correct. No, you explained it perfectly.
I mean, I'm currently reading the Bible as well, to see what the other things out there are, and again, I'm not seeing the Trinity anywhere. And I know that in virtually the entire Bible, from what Jesus says, He never says, that there is the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. These things are later additions, and again, it doesn't sit well with your innate side, because you just feel something's off with that.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. It doesn't. Jesus oftentimes, when He speaks in the Bible, when it's recorded as speaking in the Bible, He's mentioning that, He isn't God. That when you see Him, you see the Father, but not in the sense that He's
physical.
Physically a part of it in that sense. So no, you're absolutely right. It doesn't speak of it.
Because there's numerous passages, and it's very clear if someone's just reading what Jesus speaks in the Bible, they see a very different version to what's taught in the churches of this Trinity and that Jesus is God.
Yes.
So, and that's where I guess Islam comes into the picture, where it's like a puzzle which fits all the pieces correctly, right? So
It does. I mean, I've come into the knowledge of, even more so as I've been since I've taken my Shahada now, almost 3 years, that, Islam is the only monotheistic religion.
yeah.
Yeah, that there's one God, Allah. He has no partners, and if you associate any partners with him, it's not good.
It's
To simplify it. Yeah.
So it's in the Old Testament, right, which was one of the first commandments. You should not have no God besides me. So
exactly.
it's the same message throughout, as they say, many prophets, one message.
Yes.
So now moving on.
Sure. Yes.
What were the hurdles, if any, for you to take the step of becoming a Muslim? Were there any like pressures you felt like, but I don't know, that should I really become a Muslim? Or once you acknowledge it was the truth, was there something that was?
So, funnily enough, it's even though we've discussed, how Jesus isn't the Son of God.
Yeah.
I did have challenges. I guess trying to figure out how does he now fit.
Yeah.
If I if I take my Shahada, how does he fit within?
How does he fit in this whole picture?
In this picture, and so. No matter how much we may know something, because we've been programmed in such a way, and I was struggling with that, but I would suggest or submit that was perhaps the only challenge.
Okay.
And it's no longer a challenge because I understand that Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, as well as all the messengers.
Yeah.
Before him and the final one after him are all Allah's messengers, and all are recognized the same.
Yeah.
And again, that there aren't any partners with Allah.
Yeah.
And so I've come to accept that and know that.
Yeah.
So not just an acceptance; it's a knowing.
Yeah. I guess doing the analysis and finding out, like being firm about it rather than just taking on blind faith, right?
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so now you take the Shahada, and which year would that be in?
2020.
2020.
June
so
5th, 2020.
June 5th, 2020. So
Yeah.
what, 3 years?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
Yes, yeah. It'll be 3 years this June. Yeah.
So what were now you've taken the Shahada, how did you feel about it? What were your post-Shahada feelings, if you want to call it?
Yes. I felt peace, actually.
Okay.
I felt relief and peace, because as I mentioned previously, I had been on a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
After leaving Christianity.
Yeah.
And as I said, I always knew there was a God. I always believed in him.
Yeah.
In my human experience, sometimes I didn't always put him first, and but I still knew that as long as I was on this earth and needed to fulfill my purpose, I needed God in it. And so after I took my Shahada, I felt like I've what's the word? Right, come full circle, if you will.
Yes.
So I felt peace. I felt accomplished.
Yeah.
I felt peace, relief, and I felt closeness to Allah.
Yeah.
Once again.
Yeah.
And I felt, as you know, like one of the, I didn't jump into, what's the word I'm looking for? So after I took my Shahada and I felt those feelings,
Yeah.
I then realized it's a lot to learn.
Okay. It's a journey,
lot to
right?
turn-
There's
take
so
in.
much to learn.
And I was like, now where do I begin? And I actually shared that I took my Shahada with one of my best mates, the one I told you about in last year.
Yeah.
He's from Bahrain. I mentioned
Okay.
to him that I took my Shahada, and he asked me, am I doing my daily prayers?
Yeah.
And I knew about them, but I wasn't doing them because I don't know if I was thinking they were optional,
Yes.
but I wasn't jumping into it. And when he said that, it dawned on me I should be doing my daily prayers. And I think I perhaps wasn't doing it because I wanted to do it in Arabic.
Okay, yeah.
And I
And that can seem a bit daunting.
yes, that's even daunting. And when I commit to something, I tend to want to do it like properly.
Yes.
So I think that tied into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But once he said that, the light bulb clicked.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, I started doing the 5 daily prayers. I had to use my phone to help guide me along the way because I wanted to do it in Arabic, but now I'm no longer having to use the phone. yeah.
You'll be leading us in Tarawih tonight?
I don't know about that.
No.
But yeah.
I mean, so for those who are watching, if you don't know exactly what Islam is, we could just backtrack a little bit. Islam is submission to God alone, and there's the idea that there's only one God worthy of worship. He doesn't have any kids, no parents, no spouse, no cousins, no pets, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one God worthy of worship.
Yes.
And if you want forgiveness, you just ask forgiveness. It's very simple, right? You don't have to go through anyone. You don't have to sacrifice anything. It's only one God, and He has sent His messengers, starting from Adam, Abraham, Noah, Jesus, and all the other messengers, finally with Prophet Muhammad, and they all came with the same message to worship God alone.
Yes.
It's very simple. No frills attached.
Nothing at all. That's time for that.
So now moving on. So now you've taken your shahada, and so you're starting to pray.
Yes.
Did you find anything after praying difficult or daunting? Like maybe fasting, I can imagine, might have seemed a bit difficult, or
so with prayer, I can tell you the first time I fully prostrated. That was an experience. I felt very humbled and very. I wasn't overwhelmed, but it was a feeling of being humbled, feeling joy, feeling peace, like being in sajda?
Yes, sajda.
Prostration. It's when you do it, when one does it for the first time, and I did it for the first time, it was really like I'm praying to Allah and I'm feeling connected.
Yeah.
So I felt very, very, very good about that.
Yeah.
In terms of fasting, the first time I fasted, it was really good.
Okay.
I didn't have any problems with it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Thankfully, but the second time last year.
Yeah, that was difficult.
That was difficult. Like I said, I had to stop. But that was an emotional part for me because I was more than halfway through.
Okay.
And the month of Ramadan is a blessed month, and we're doing not only 5 daily prayers but additional prayers and reading the Quran and being drawn even closer to Allah.
Yeah.
And so I felt bad that I had to break the fast, but again, this third Ramadan this year, it's going well so far.
Inshallah, it go well and more, inshallah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we know that there is that, like if you are sick or something and you're not able to fast, then you're exempted from fasting and you could make it up later. So
yes.
So it's not like you're missing out on the good deeds, but obviously I could see where you feel that. So
yes. Yeah.
So now, what changed in your life after Islam? Like on a bigger scale, do you feel like what were the main things that changed? Physically, mentally?
Sure. So the main thing that changed, I would say, is I guess my devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I wanted to know more about Him, and I wanted to know more in terms of the deen. And so that meant study.
Yes.
And so I took, what year was it? I guess it's 2 years ago now. I traveled to Morocco.
Okay.
And I attended, every day I went to the masjid.
Right.
Every day, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And I even got to know some of the brothers, and I wanted them to teach me Arabic and this deen and more about my faith. And they did. They're very, as you know, the Muslims are very hospitable, very accommodating, and very helpful. Yeah. So that was my first experience in terms of study. So it was like 2 weeks of study in Morocco. Yeah. Beautiful, tending the masjids, that was a really good experience for me.
Okay.
Even this past December, I went to the Reviving Islamic Convention in Toronto, Canada.
Okay, yeah.
And so thousands of people from Canada and other parts of the world converged on Toronto, and we listened to scholars and learn about this deen.
Yeah, it must have been a great experience.
That was another great experience. And so, because I've enjoyed studying, I like to learn.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the hadiths that talks about being a seeker of knowledge.
Yes.
This falls, right into my lap, so to speak.
Yeah.
I love this part of Islam in terms of the study and the obviously the spiritual aspect.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes.
It fills like all the buckets, Like
Yes.
it gives you that,
Yes.
because there's just so much to learn, and like you've got so many traditions to, go over and look at the hadiths, look at the Quran,
Yes.
even like looking at the stories of the prophets, which are very different from, the Old Testament, where there's just many differences, and you get to look at that and unlearn things and relearn different things in a new way. So I guess that's, and you'll never get to the end of that road, It'll continue till the day, until the day we go back to Allah. So.
Absolutely. Another thing I would add in terms of change, one thing is I started to grow my beard, so I didn't know right away that this was one of the Prophet's ways, peace and blessings be upon him. I didn't know that this was part of his sunnah.
Right.
And so since I've grown the beard, it feels like I have now some antennas that even connect me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that'll be a physical change.
Yeah. It looks good and it looks great.
Thank you. Like I was a little I gotta grow a gray beard, So it's that part of the vanity, but
it looks great.
Thank you, yeah. But to know that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, this was one of the things that he spoke about. It's great to know that I'm following the sunnah in that way. Yeah.
And there's so many things, and these things, as we know, they're never going to harm you in a way, right?
Yes.
So all these things are going to come back and make you a better person.
Yes.
Right? Like, for example, not drinking alcohol. Now, it may seem tempting and all that, but we know even from a health benefit, like from a health-wise, it's not good for your gambling and all these other things, right? So it may seem like they're rules, but in reality, they're liberating you, right?
They're definitely liberating me. I mean, I've engaged in hedonism before.
We all have.
We all have, exactly, and it profits me nothing. So you realize that it's no good in terms of one's physical health.
Yeah.
And of course, spiritual health. So
it becomes like a black hole. The more you give it, the more it's gonna grow, right?
This is it. It's a void, really.
Definitely. So, final question: what is your message to those searching for the truth?
Okay. So, my message would be similar to the message of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one true God, and Islam is the one true religion. It is the only religion, as I mentioned earlier, that is a monotheistic religion. And it is the only one that has a universality about it, and that it draws everyone into it. And as I mentioned even earlier, when I was in high school, how in religious knowledge, one of the first things I learned was Islam is peace.
Yes.
That's what Islam is. It is peace. And if we submit to Allah, you're a Muslim.
And gives you peace here as well, right?
It gives you peace. Yes. Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
So, and I guess inshallah we'll wrap it up for today. It was a great interview. And thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Inshallah. So if anyone has any more questions, you can leave them in the comment section down below. You'll probably see this interview on Facebook or on YouTube. So if you're seeing it on Facebook, on Bermuda Muslim portal, you can follow it to see what the Muslims in Bermuda are, doing and what they're up to, and so inshallah, I'll see you all later. Assalamu alaikum wa Tyrone.
Wa alaikum salam.